Welcome to Unlocking Your Truth, another podcast by Dr. Leslie Phillips.
Hello everybody and welcome to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie. My name is Dr. Leslie Phillips and I am your host, and you are listening to us on 101.7 FM across the Fraser Valley, and you can live stream us on civl.ca. And I'm here today as usual with Corey, the show producer.
Hello.
And we've also got a guest who I am going to introduce in a moment. But before I do, let me just explain, in case you're listening for the first time, that Unlocking Your Truth is a talk show. And it's a talk show that focuses on metaphysics and spirituality and healing and intuition and all of those wonderful things. And so every week we usually have a discussion topic. And today's topic is going to be don't get stuck in the muck, and healing means feeling. Because we're so happy that we have our wonderful guest today, who's called Trilby Johnson, and she's an author, a speaker, and a body energy alchemist, which sounds fantastic. And she supports forward-thinking individuals, and that, of course, is all of us that listen to this show, who want to embrace their wholeness and next level of spiritual well-being. And Trilby says that when we connect to the essence of who we truly are and realize and align with our full potential, we can live happy, healthy, and successful lives. And she specializes in quickly resolving core imbalances that destabilize and hinder the integrative process of the body, mind, and spirit. So we're really looking forward to Trilby sharing her wisdom with us. And she's also the author of 2 books. One is called Fearlessly Alone, Stop the Lonely Crisis. And the other is called Find Your Happy Aha Moments. So Trilby, welcome to the show.
Hi, Leslie. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, we're delighted to have you as well. And I've got lots of questions for you. And one of my first question, I thought the title of your book was fantastic. Fearlessly Alone, Stop the Lonely Crisis. As you know, our listeners send in questions, and over the time we've been doing the show, we've had thousands of questions. And, you know, I know from what people tell me that fear of loneliness and being alone is one of the major things that we're afraid of. And so maybe you can tell us more about how you came to write that book, how you came to recognize that as a problem, and how your book helps people with that.
Sure. I'd love to. Fearlessly Alone, actually the title is Fearlessly Alone, Stop the Lonely Crisis and Find You Happy. Anyway. It's a lot my life story. I'm an expert at loneliness, and I went right to the bottom of it because I'm curious. I want to know what's going on. Why do we feel lonely? Because I knew that it wasn't true. So for me, my life's been very much about how do I consolidate and live my spirituality, my wholeness practically. And it's about putting what I call the meta into the physical. You know, the meta is the highest state. So how can I do that in my daily life? And so one of the great things that came out of being lonely was I had a lot of time to myself, and I really wanted to know myself. I've also realized the connection between the thoughts we have and our emotions, and the impact that this has on the body. I have a passionate love affair with bodies. They fascinate me. They're absolute masterminds, and we really do have everything we need. So I wanted to to the best of my ability what was going on in myself, so I could live the life that I knew I was here to do. So out of my desire to connect, I also wanted to, in my deepest, darkest moments, I wanted to find someone who had the information I was seeking. And I think that's why I wrote the book, because I think we all have had lonely moments. And, you know, the paradox, of course, is that you don't have to be alone to be lonely. Often people complain that they feel extremely isolated, more so when they're surrounded by people. And I think it's to do with, my understanding is, I think it's to do with our own presence and being comfortable with ourselves. And so I've studied a lot of religions and wise scriptures, and I've found that there was this belief that runs right back to, well, I think is the beginning of time, is that we are separate from our creator, and what I call the myth of separation. And this shows up in the fear of us being judged by others and being alone or lonely. So in the book, I do differentiate between being alone and the feeling of loneliness. And the good news is that loneliness is something that we can transform. And I know that because I've done that. And you can transform it from a place of suffering to great strength, and where you finally can find your happy, which is enjoying your solitude. And I think that's to do with being the I am, in the I am presence, connected to our higher power. And while I was doing research, I did find, which is good news, that researchers are now starting to link these emotional states, chronic emotional states of loneliness and isolation, to health situations. So, you know, of course, unfortunately, the medical sector's getting hold of that, and, you know, they go down the pharmaceutical resolution. But I think it's all just part of the whole plan of, you know, becoming aware of our wholeness. But we have to have that consciousness, and I think that's why we're here, and that's why I wrote the book, because I want people to know that there are other ways. And to encourage that, you know, I think when we're alone, we think we're the only one. And I know from reading books myself in my life, when I found a book that echoed a really deep thought I'd had, and I just thought, oh wow, first, I'm not crazy, and I'm not alone. So that was very comforting. And we are going through unprecedented times. You know, the population's never been so large. We have the largest elderly population that's going through. So, you know, how are we as individuals choosing to handle that? And more people will be alone, as in their own company, just because of lifestyles, you know, and so that we have the tools to cope with this, because I think we all know we have to change. And I know what I found frustrating for a long time was people would say, yeah, we have to change, or just change this, just change that. And I was standing there shouting, yes, how? Show me how. So I also include that in the book, a lot of tools I used to help me shift, to stop my lonely crisis and find my happy, and be in a state of peace and calm, and feel connected and confident in who I am, you know, and to understand my emotions better. I think people can feel overwhelmed because they believe the emotion. You know, Byron Katie said, you know, who would you be without that thought? And that is so powerful. So it's slowly starting to process all of that information, and sift out and choose consciously what it is that we wish to keep. And so happiness is a choice. And I know that because for a long time I chose to be and feel lonely. And one day I just thought, why am I doing this? And I thought, okay, stop. I no longer need this experience. But I wrote the book because I do truly believe that there are people who are desperately lonely, and they don't know how to change it. So I'm hoping that with my book that I can offer part of my experience, so they can move forward.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, because I do really believe that that is a it is a book we need. It is help we need. There are so many people who feel lonely, but I also get what you say, that the gift in time spent alone is self-realization, the deeper understanding of yourself and who you are, and through that deep understanding, the connection with source, the realization that you need never be alone. So I just thank you so much for writing that book. I haven't read it yet, but thank you, because I know the world needs it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think the hardest thing for anyone who's experienced loneliness, as you were saying, is to tell them, well, just choose happiness, because it's not there anymore. Like, you don't get that you have a choice to make that choice, and just telling people to do it is one thing, but showing them how to make that change is so crucial. So
Yes.
crucial, because there's nothing as, because of course what we focus on grows, and the more we focus on our lonely position, the lonelier we get. It's terrible.
Absolutely. And it's to, educate in the sense, and so people really understand what the reflection is. I think a lot of people know the saying, your life's a reflection. But I got to the point and I thought, no, there's got to be more to this, and it's how you understand, your understanding of the reflection, that will change. And when I really got that my life was a reflection of what I was putting out, I thought, okay, I'm going to change this. And in some areas it went really quickly, and others, I'm continuously, we're never done. And that's the joy of it. I wake up every day and it's an adventure. But yeah, absolutely. And that's the body energy alchemy that I do, because I know there's this energy that we hold on to in our bodies, in our energy bodies, because of thought patterns. And if we're not releasing that, so there's the mental component, which is, yes, okay, I'm going to be happy, and affirmations work, but up to a certain point. That's what I found. Even there I came up against this resistance. So it's also showing people and helping them to transmute that energy, because it becomes like a gravitational pull. And if you've been lonely and feeling like shit for a long time, to think, oh yeah, I'm going to be happy, it's they say fake it till you make it. And whilst that can be the case in certain circumstances, you can't fake it all the time, and because eventually the energy just implodes and you find yourself even more overwhelmed perhaps than before. So yes, it's very important. And for me, that's what I want. I want to share tools with people, like, how do you become happy? And when you choose, yes, I'm going to be happy, how can you make that easy? Because there are processes that we need. Because if it was just that easy as saying, okay, I'm going to be happy, we would be doing it. And most of us are not doing it. So I think more and more of us are, as the energy changes, and we are being supported more with the higher vibrations. It's kind of like we're in the stream now and we're flowing, but it's to alleviate that personal suffering, because it is a suffering. And when you're in a place of suffering, happiness seems to be an illusion. So yeah.
Thank you. And that leads me to two more questions. So maybe we'll do one before the break and one after the break. So when I introduced you, I said that we were going to be talking about don't get stuck in the muck, and how does healing mean feeling? So can you explain what does it mean to be stuck in the muck, and how does healing mean feeling?
Sure. Well, when we vibrate and we think in a certain way, we are really creating, and that's my message really, which isn't just mine, but we are co-creating with source energy all the time. So when you think what people term negative thoughts for a while, it becomes like a molasses, and you get stuck in it, So if you're continuously telling yourself, because that's what I did for years, I was telling myself, oh, you're not this, or, I am this, but all negative. And it became true. Life was reflecting that back to me. I would be meeting people who would tell me, you're this and you're that. And I thought, and my guidance was that feeling of hurt. I thought, why do I feel so hurt? And people like Abraham Hicks and explain, that it's because it's not in alignment with what source knows. Right. But it's again about the pragmatics of it. How do you transform that hurt? So, and when you feel hurt constantly or shot down, then you can get overwhelmed, you go into depression, you feel stressed, and eventually it could also lead to having suicidal thoughts, where you just want out because you just don't know how to cope anymore. Then why the healing is the feeling, because I noticed there's a lot of, for a long time, people said, oh, you mustn't feel this or you mustn't feel that. I know for myself, I didn't want to be afraid anymore, but I went at it from the side of resistance. I'm not going to feel afraid anymore. And of course, what bubbled up was fear. Wow, because what you resist will persist. And I think because I did have so much time to myself, and I really started to listen, and I started to listen to what the fear was saying. And, I've done various studies. NLP helped me a lot, neuro-linguistic programming, because I love their premise where they talk about the voices in your head. And this was such a revelation, because in psychological circles, of course, that's, if you have voices in your head, they say it could be schizophrenia, and there's medical conditions, and there are those cases too. But it was Stanislav Grof, Stormy Search for the Self. That book was amazing, because he spoke about the dark night of the soul, and it just helped me to understand that these voices in my head, and in concurrence with what I was learning in neuro-linguistic programming, was that these voices were a part of me. And so that started the integration and the acceptance. And so I started to listen to my fear and all the different voices of fear, because we categorize fear, and that I do talk about in the book, which I call the face of fear. And of course, we generalize it, but what is it that we are afraid of? And when you start to break it down, it becomes easier to handle, because you micromanage it. Whereas if you just think, oh, I'm fear, panic attack, anxiety, that's what happened. The system just goes into overwhelm. So by doing that, I was able to feel it and find out, oh, wow, that's actually what my fear is telling me, and start to understand that it was working for me and not against me. And I think that's the most important thing when it comes to self-trust, and believing that, the universe, not only does the universe have my back, but I have my back. Because I suffered from extreme trust issues. I mean, I pushed it to the point where I did not even trust myself anymore. And it was extremely acutely uncomfortable. And it got to the point where I just said, either this changes or, I leave. And I just knew if I kept going that I would find the solution. That's why feeling is healing. And when you start to listen and you don't judge your feelings, you know, people say, oh, the ego, you got to get rid of the ego. No, that's contrary. That's contrary. That's actually dissembling the wholeness even more. It's integration. How can I look at this differently? And I really feel that that's part of the human experience. All these emotions, that's what we came to do, is to feel, to see it manifest, to see it materialize, and to feel the disappointment, to feel the joy. That's part of it. But we've just been trained, and we get caught up in this kind of field of, you know, morphic field of what it's supposed to be.
Right.
So it's about breaking away, and I say redefine, you know, what does it mean for you as a co-creator? Define everything. If you want to use the word, I don't know, want, what does it mean for you? And by that I mean, where are you vibrating when you say that? Because yes, you can say I want from a place of I don't have it, but I can also say it from a place of true desire. I really want, you know, and the energy, and it's the dynamic. So that's why our bodies play such an important role in helping us to feel. And emotion is different. It's emotions and thoughts are together, they associations, but the body's feeling, reaction or response will be an indicator of where we are in alignment. And so I also saw through, really, I did the energy work, but when I did the massage therapy, I really thought, wow, I mean, first of all, everybody's body is different and they are beautiful. They're just so beautiful. But we are also different, and so many of us are disconnected from our bodies. I was disconnected from my body. You know, I checked out because life was so shitty. I thought, what the hell am I doing here? So we can do that as well. And that's why people say, well, being grounded, or what I like is being in alignment, is so important. But if we disconnected from the vessel, which is our grounding vessel, which is our antenna, we are going to struggle. And you know, that's why we also do get depression, anxiety attacks, and that, because it's kind of all this information's trying to get through and adjust. And so it's taking the time, finding the resources we need, the people to help us, to support us, and first believing that that's possible. For a long time I thought that I was alone, but we are all here to support each other, to complement each other. So, yeah.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I've got to go for a quick break now. So, but when we come back, we've got lots more questions for you. And listeners, you've been listening to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie. And today we are talking with Trilby Johnson about her book and many other things. And we'll be back after these few short messages. And you're listening live on 101.7 FM across the Fraser Valley. And you can live stream on civl.ca. So welcome back, listeners, to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie. My name's Dr. Leslie Phillips, and I'm here with Corey and with our guest, Trilby Johnson. And
Oh, Dr. Leslie, before we went on the break, you said we're transmitting over the Fraser Valley, and the poor listeners that are listening today will be going, "Okay, I've got an English accent. I understand this person's from New Zealand. She's got a South African accent. And I got a Canadian guy. Where is this Fraser Valley?"
Yeah, because there actually is a Fraser Valley in the United States
Yeah,
as
as
well.
well. I'm sure there are some other ones.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just thought that was quite cute.
Of course, you might be listening to the podcast, in which case you could be anywhere.
Fraser Valley could be anywhere you want it to be.
Exactly.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah, so anyway, to continue our conversation, so we talked in the first segment very much about the issue, the problem of loneliness and depression, and trying to shift our vibration out of a denser, heavier feeling. So maybe in this segment we can talk more about the solution. What are the 3 elements of resolving pain and finding a resolution to the problems that we've talked about, in your opinion?
Yeah, thank you. Well, in my self-exploration, I had to address the 3 aspects, which for me are the body, which is our physical body, and that includes the energy bodies, and then the emotional, mental aspects, and then the spiritual. And it's that holy trinity. We do need all 3, and it's about getting those into alignment. And it's an integrative process. Some things happen quicker and easier than others, and some we really struggle with in our different ways. And if people don't like to think of it as the spiritual, I just call it the energy realm, because it's the more abstract and subtle. So it's these 3 things that we have, and kind of tweaking and figuring them out and allowing more alignment between the 2. I think life really is about balance and the harmony of things, and that doesn't mean, I think people sometimes think that balance means flatlining, like life will be boring, and not at all. I mean, that hasn't been my experience at all. And there are still these waves, but they're these beautiful fluctuations rather than
exactly.
The roller coaster rides, that was like, oh, hold on to your seat. So and what people call in the flow. So of course, when it comes to pain, there's many kinds of pain, and as I mentioned in my book, and it is becoming more widely known, people are starting to slowly connect their emotional states to their physical ailments, or what we call a disease. And diseases can also be like emotional, panic attacks, depression. So it's wherever there's a form of struggle and discomfort, and sometimes it does get to the point where it is a physical manifestation. I think people don't consider, or they think of emotions as different to physical ailments, but when you understand that the body and the mind are working together, and what we're aiming for is true synergy, harmonious integration, that's why we need all 3. And the energy or spiritual aspect is kind of like what helps us what helps us transmute it, and whether that is a spiritual or religious belief, or just an awareness of how energy works, and that connection between the body, the physical body, and then the energy bodies, and that. So yeah.
Yes, and so thank you. And you talked about you called it the holy trinity of mind, body, and spirit, and how they're interconnected. And so I'm sure that you can sort of come in from any of those perspectives in terms of um, where healing begins. But I know that you have a lot to say about the physical body. You know, you're telling us how much you love the physical body, and how it has its own innate healing ability. So can you take us more onto a journey into the physical body, and how important you feel it is to explore the physical body when it comes to healing?
Absolutely. I mean, I find it interesting. People say, well, you know, where do you live? And people give their address, but our true home is our body, first and foremost. And because I've traveled extensively, I know that wherever you go, you take yourself with you. And that's very true. And sometimes changing the environment can certainly give a fresh outlook and open up more possibilities. But if you haven't addressed the issues, all of a sudden you start to notice, that pattern, I've seen it before, and it follows you around. Our physical body, we think of it as having 5 senses, and some acknowledge that, yes, there's a 6th sense, or ESP, whatever you like to call it. But our body, my experience of our body is we have the ability to access so much more sensorial and sensual energies, and this is starting to happen. So it's very important that we connect it to our body, because it's how we experience our world. It's the vehicle in which we go through this life, and it's the antenna which picks up on the energy waves, and the brain is going to process that in unison with the information that the body's giving. And so it's important to also retrain our brains and to, as I said, open up the definitions, which is every time you redefine something, you start to create a new neural pathway, and that's what we're looking for. So it's really on the physical, cerebral cognitive level, where we break habits, and generally it's agreed that we kind of need 21 days to drop a neural pathway and create a new one. It is possible quicker, but again, because sometimes there's this emotional or energetic baggage, it can seem to take longer. So it's learning how to apply our focus, our cognitive focus, in improved and better ways to, again, recognize when we think a certain thought, how does it resonate in our body? Like we can all relate, I think, to butterflies in our stomach, and people can feel it either when they going into fear or when they're excitement. And of course, we know cognitively that when you're excited or fear, it's actually the brain goes through the same process. So it's just that kind of reasoning that will flick it over into, oh yeah, actually I feel excited. So it's important to understand those processes. And I think the best guidance system is our feelings. We don't all have to be rocket scientists and really understand how the brain works, but our body is telling us. And then there's the intuitive side, which is often, well, for me, it's been that little voice that whispers very quietly, and when it is in the silence. So we have to find ways to optimize how we energize our body, and for that, silence is good. And there's techniques like meditation and yoga which would support that, and then also just being aware of course, what we feed our body. One of the myths that I'm determined to bust is we are what we eat, because if you believe that, yes, that's true, but we are so much more than that. And my experience is that the more you loving and caring and in connection with your body, and actually asking your body what it needs. So there's this conversation that I have with my body, and I have a conversation with my body. What would you like to eat? And I use muscle testing to find out, because often my mind will say, oh, I need this. And sometimes I ask my body and it's like, no. And a good example is a craving.
Mm-hmm.
A craving, and then we think, oh no, I can't have, I don't know, that piece of chocolate cake because, the calories. But, a calorie is just the energy of a unit of energy, and so are we. So it's about directing that. So get to know your home, furnish it the way you want it. Body image is so huge. A recent study in February this year, and that was in America, and basically 90% men and women are unhappy with their body image. So it's like you're living in a house that you don't even love, and it's linked to everything. So it's, again, the more we can bring consciousness or awareness to the thoughts we think and the beliefs we have, we can start to change that. And my biggest aha moment was when I realized that, because I hated my body, I thought I wasn't happy because of the way I looked, and I was bullied and abused because of the way I looked. And then one day I thought, wow, the only thing that's really supported me is my body. And from that day, my life changed. So it's important to love your home, to take care of it, to complement it, because, I think it was Jim Rohn who said, take care of your body because it's the only place you have to live. And that is so true. Sorry if I got the quote, but I think it was him. So yeah, and I used to have terrible migraines, and at the time I didn't realize what it was because I was disconnected from my body. And what really helped me, it's funny how Source leads us where we need to go and where the intuition leads us, because I started to go for massage, and I went to massage because I wanted to try it. I was curious. And after about 3 months, I realized, oh, wow, I haven't had a migraine for like 6 weeks, which was a lot for me because I was having them all the time just because my energy, my emotions were so suppressed and repressed. So it's important to hear what our body's saying, to understand that the ailments that we're feeling are our body's way of attempting to show us. I always say pain is an alarm. So how long are you going to keep hitting the snooze button? Because you can only do it for so long. And I do think that the body and the soul make an agreement and they decide to work together. And where disease occurs is when the body says, right, I've got to look after myself now, and it starts to.
Yeah, because you're not paying attention, so I better do it.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's kind of got this system and backup that it will say, well, I've tried to let you know, but you're not listening. So my job is to keep you alive, to function, so I will now do that. And if there's a misalignment, then we have pain. So it helps to listen. Pain's great because there's so much information in the pain. It's like, wow, I'm in pain, and understanding the different levels. At the moment, a lot of us are experiencing awakening symptoms, which are these phantom pains and things like that. And we can't always relate them to the physical body as such. And this is a lot as past life memory comes up to be released. And people are saying, I don't know what's wrong. I've gone through it too, and I thought, what the heck's that, and just being with it. And that's where the body, talking to it and listening to what it needs rest, it needs to be hydrated, it needs the foods that it needs, because your body can transform the food. And what generally happens is your body will let you know when it wants movement, what kind of food it wants to eat. And I think people freak out because they think, oh, well, I'm going to be eating chocolate or, hamburgers every day. But your body doesn't want hamburgers and chocolate every day. And that's the beauty
Some of us do.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's okay. You
Okay,
know,
yeah, sorry. One of the things you said, it was very interesting. Just it said something to me. And says your body is. They say your body is what you eat. You are what you eat. But in actuality, your body or you are what eats you.
exactly.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Exactly, and that's why fear, strong emotions, and the more Eastern Ayurvedic, they always say, or I mean, it has come through to Western culture now. When you eat in your meal, make sure that you're quiet, you're not stressed, there's no strong emotions, because it affects our digestion and how the body assimilates the food. So and because we are unique, what works for me is not necessarily how it's going to work for other people. And when I do work with clients, for me, what's important is that they connect to their own inner authority and what works for them. So it's about what their body needs, what their body requires. And, I've been amazed at what shows up, because a lot of what society will label as negative, the body says, yeah, I need that for that moment, and it's what's wonderful is it's always in transition, and every day is a new day. And I think biorhythms kind of suggest that, where it hints that the body has these rhythms throughout the day, and absolutely, and yet, you've got thousands of women jumping on a scale and looking at what their weight is, and if you do it from a sense of peacefulness and it makes you feel good, but I don't get that that's what it's doing for people, so
Yeah.
it's we are more than that. And I mean, I knew that because my whole life I was told that I didn't look the way I was supposed to look, and I thought, what? It's like, I just thought that's weird. I mean, we are all meant to be who we are and have the bodies we have, because we bring through the qualities and talents that only we can do. And we're like musical instruments. That I love that analogy of the body as a musical instrument, and each one of us is going to hit a very specific note and bring it in to this reality, and that will add to the music and song of life.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. I love that metaphor as well. Now I have to go to another commercial break. And listeners, you've been listening to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie on CIVL on 101.7 FM. And we will be back after these few short messages. So welcome back to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie, and my name's Dr. Leslie Phillips. And on Unlocking Your Truth today, we have been talking to Trilby Johnson, who is the author of 2 books, and one of them is called Fearlessly Alone. And she's been talking to us about healing means feeling and how not to get stuck in the muck. And we've been talking before the break about the physical body and how the physical body communicates to us through its emotions and through physical symptoms. And we've also been talking about how important it is to listen to the body's messages and to respond to the body's messages. And so I wanted to ask you, we might share some listeners' questions, but I think what would be even more beneficial is if you were able to share some techniques, for example, to improve body esteem, that whoever listens to the podcast forever will have a lovely gift from you that they can put into practice in their lives.
Yeah, sure. One technique that's very powerful, it's a mindset basically. So what are you saying to yourself? And I love Masaru Emoto's work, because he really highlighted the impact that vibration and words have on cells. And of course, the human body is 85% water, and that's the emotion. So what are you saying to yourself? And again, that epiphany I had when I was telling myself, oh, you fat, you ugly, nobody loves you. Well, that was going in, and so our body hears everything we say, every thought we think, and everything we feel. So again, what kind of home would you like? So become aware of what you're saying to yourself. And a great way of doing, very powerful, is say it out loud. And yeah, people will look at you strange and say, oh my God, look at that woman or man talking to themselves, And I even had people say, it's a sign of madness. And I said, no, but I'm the only one that gives myself the answers that I want. And that's the whole, I am my source, I am my resource, and connecting to that inner knowing. So say it out loud and write it down. Writing such a great tool, because it externalizes it and it makes you actually see. And then when you say it out loud, you hear yourself. And when it's in our head, it's just part of the pattern. It's part of the habits. And I really got that one day, because I just burst out and said, oh my God, blah, blah, whatever I said. And I thought, wow, did I just hear myself? So that's that saying, did you just hear what you said? So important, start to write down, and do it in small steps. So if there's something really big showing up in your life, again, start to look at how it makes you feel, and then break it down. So what did I say to myself? Or, Byron Katie's work, the work is great for that, because it really slows you down. So whatever you need to do to get there, do that. So yeah, that's one technique. Another very powerful and really one of the most organic and simple ways is the breath. It helped me so much with my panic and anxiety attacks, to move through that. And I got to the place where I could really feel it transforming. And sedatives and all that were not doing it for me. So because the anxiety is, something's not okay, and if you and sometimes we have to take what we have to take to get it to a place where it's manageable. But the most effective thing and quick and natural is your breath, what I call conscious breathing. Because a lot of people say, oh, well, I'm breathing anyway. So, well, yeah, you're having panic attacks too. So how can we change that? So it brings you to the present. It stops you. It stops the mind chatter. That's the wonderful thing about conscious breathing, because the mind is always looking out for you. It's going to be telling you, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do this. And if we don't slow it down, it just runs away with us, and we can go into overwhelm. So stop and breathe. You have to do it anyway, and you can do it anywhere in a big meeting. Just take that really conscious breath, fall into your abdominal area with your awareness, and really just slow down. And people say, but how do I do that? And it's like, start to observe how you breathe, and it gets you out of yourself, and it makes your energy expand, so you're actually able to see the bigger picture. And of course, it's oxygenating the brain, because the brain, again, is your mainframe. It's where all the data is processed. And if you're operating at a 2/3 of the body's oxygen is used by the brain, and if we're not already breathing properly, then the brain is operating kind of, not at optimal level. So we want to get the brain up so that when the signals come in, it's a smooth, mean, clean machine, that just like tuck, 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 and it's set up in the right way. So those are, there's many more techniques, but those have been the most effective. So yeah, so don't be afraid to say out loud, mirror work is another one. Stand in front of the mirror. Takes a lot of courage, but it's very effective. And whatever comes out, just stick with it. I promise you it will change, because when you become aware of what you're actually thinking about yourself, then you can change it. But often it's so, it's in the muck and we're swirling around in this muck. But when you look at yourself in the mirror and you say, I hate you because you're this, or I love you, it comes back like, oh wow, you have the awareness. And I think we need that to make that shift. It kind of wakes us up. It makes it visible, it makes it tangible, it makes it auditory. And that's how we can connect the body, the physical, sensorial capacities together and start to become aware of the elements of the body, the emotional, mental, and then the energy.
Thank you. And we're actually getting close towards the end of the show, so we might not have time for any listeners' questions, which is okay, because I think it's just wonderful to listen to the wisdom that you're sharing. So is there one piece of wisdom that you'd like to, if there's one thing that we remember from our conversation, if there's one thing that you'd like to convey to the listeners that would be really helpful for them in their lives, what would it be?
I would like to say love yourself, but I know that when I didn't love myself, that was like, yeah, right. I would say stop judging yourself. Stop judging. Just stop judging. Start to just be who you are. If you make a mess, oh, cool, I made a mess, Oh, I want to do this and I haven't done it. Oh, I made a mistake. Okay, I made a mistake. Start there. Stop judging. Judgment is about that separation. It separates us from ourself. And as long as we're judging ourselves, we will stay separated. Now, again, not to confuse people, say, oh, but you have to judge. The brain will judge because it's this matching, mismatching. Okay, so that's a different thing. But again, to have the presence of how that makes you feel. If you think, oh, I'm a klutz and I'll never get anything right, how do you feel when you say that to yourself? Does it make you feel good? To a certain point, yes, because some people like to suffer, and they say when you finally let go of what your payoff is, then you're like, oh yeah, okay, maybe I won't do that anymore. But judgment really does. You can't love when there's judgment. And for me, I think we are moving out of a polarity, duality way of experiencing life into wholeness, and there is this merging, and judgment will not get you there. Okay, so it's again becoming aware of where you judge yourself, how you judge yourself, and then choosing what are you going to take away from that. So, okay, I made a mistake. What can I learn from it? So it's reframing rather than going into the self-recrimination and lack and those kind of things. So don't judge yourself, and you'll know if you're doing it because it's painful. Yeah.
Thank you. And Trilby, if any of our listeners want to get a hold of you, what's the best place for them to go to?
Yeah, sure. Well, my website is trilbyjohnsontheconnective.com, and you can email me from there, or email me at info@trilbyjohnsontheconnective.com. I'm on Facebook as well under Trilby Johnson The Connective, and you can always reach out to me there, or Twitter @ConnectiveBody. So yeah, please visit my website. I have a free download there, which is on the conscious breathing. It's called De-Stress, Detox and Relax, and that will give you a flavor of the breath and how you can use that. And then, yeah, please, if you have any questions, I have a 30-minute complimentary, what I call an assessment consult, and that's just to sit down, talk with people, find out where they are in their life, what they'd like to see materialize for themselves, and if it's a possibility that I can support them or refer them to somebody else.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Trilby. And listeners, you've been listening to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie, and we've been having a delightful conversation with Trilby Johnson. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of the show. I could go on and talk for another hour with Trilby, but we can't do that because we have to turn the airwaves over to Tutor Johnny Kay and Nurse Katie, and the vinyl spinner lives on. And we'll be back next Tuesday from 7 to 8 Pacific Standard Time.
Bye all.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for joining us. You've been listening to another Unlocking Your Truth podcast by Dr. Leslie Phillips. For more information, go to our website at drlesleyphillips.com. That's drlesleyphillips.com, where you can ask questions or send her an email, and there's many free gifts on there for you as well. Come back again.